a set of circumstances which makes it possible to do something. In other words, my friends, I'm talking about the promise and definition of opportunity. And for the purposes of our time together today, I want you to think about it under the context of possibilities and how the two scenarios are intermingled when it comes to building an inclusive and accepting future. In the world of employment for individuals with disabilities. According to a 2022 Canadian survey on disabilities, it revealed that 27% or 8 million Canadians 15 years and older have one or more disabilities which limit their daily activities. However, when you provide them employment, it offers greater economic self-sufficiency, a chance to utilize their skills, to have greater participation within their sense of community. Studies by Deloitte also indicate that companies that embrace an inclusive culture and infuse individuals with disabilities within their workforce are 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes, which are indeed closely linked to employee performance and productivity. Ultimately, my friends, a success of a business is dependent upon the productivity of their employees. And employee satisfaction is a critical component to productivity and success of all employees. And by instituting individuals with disabilities, you'll increase the morale and overall production of your entire organization. One person who knows this well is my friend Lisa Kelly. For decades now, she's been fighting on the front lines of inclusive employment, helping employers to understand the relationship between the changes and supports they need to provide within a business to ensure the successful integration of individuals with disabilities. Her current role with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce as a business manager allows for her to reach out to organizations and businesses alike to share the advantages of joining the indispensable partner of business, a network including more than 60,000 businesses, organizations, and associations across the province. Her extensive experience in business development, program and workforce development, and training made Kelly the perfect person to have an inclusive conversation about a prosperous employment future for individuals with disabilities. It's a conversation chock full of useful nuggets that any organization can use to become more inclusive. So, without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, Lisa, I'll take a few seconds to welcome you to the program. I'm delighted to see you again, and thank you for agreeing to engage in conversation, my friend, and happy Monday to you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's always enjoyable to have a chat with you.
Absolutely. Now, Lisa, I know that your sort of sweet spot is helping employers um, with making the necessary adjustments to a workplace in order for them to successfully integrate and infuse individuals with disabilities into the workforce. So, what do you think is the key for them to do that successfully?
Well, that's a really broad question, and there's so many different touch points you could look at, right? But for me, I think the biggest one is to avoid preconceptions, because often they're also misconceptions. So if you just start by not thinking ahead of time what somebody can or can't do, based on probably what little you know about that individual and their abilities, that would be a great place if everybody just started to see the person and asking them what they can do and then move from there. So think the second point kind of builds off that, which is we need to educate ourselves. So if we are not familiar as employers with people with disabilities, and we probably are, because we probably have encountered people with invisible disabilities and just never know. But if we haven't, we need to educate ourselves. And we need to train our staff, and do that more than once. You can't take a 1 hour webinar and be disability confident. You just can't, because there's so many different types of disability. I mean, doctors aren't 100% familiar with every disability they encounter. So why would we expect employers to be? So I think that if you, start with those two and then move to develop and implement policies, which sounds boring, but it's actually really, really important. And that's why we have things like the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. There's so many great tools that can help us think about things we've never thought about before. I always refer to the Conference Board of Canada Toolkit, which I also love, but there's so much information out there that's really easily used that we can just access, educate ourselves, and implement those policies. And that means, providing workplace modifications, right? They're not difficult. So that would be a big one for me. Know what your obligations are and implement the changes, because you'll get so much more out of your employees if you help them to do their job well, which usually just means, again, not preconceptions. And finally, it's not enough to just hire somebody with a disability. I've hired multiple individuals with a disability. I have a disability myself. But I've hired people with different disabilities, and you learn a lot. It's to foster this inclusive culture so people feel really valued and that their experience is meaningful. So it's not just a tick box. We hired someone, let's put them at the front desk, or let's put them on the photocopier, and that's it. So that would be kind of my overall suggestions for what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, I'm sure you would agree that people with disabilities are a part of an untapped sort of labor market to fill vacant positions, and companies are really missing out on a competitive advantage if they don't hire people with disabilities. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, again, we've just not spent a lot of time thinking about this, and we need to, right? There are there's so much opportunity. And again, for me, I've had my disability most of my life. And when I got the opportunity to lead at the chamber a team that was working on disability programs, I really thought, wow, I want to hire people that have actually lived experience. And I learned so much more than any course I've taken, any educational qualification, because I just, no matter what we think, we all have these preconceptions. So again, we're limiting people's ability to participate. If we have those, we need to do more and we need to do better. So yeah, I think some of the best employees and peers I've ever worked with are people with disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also important to really establish that employee to employer relationship to better understand strengths and weaknesses and really position your company to win. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it gives you different viewpoints. It brings, it improves productivity. I just know again from my own experiences working on a team with about, I guess there were about 6 of us on our team who had self-identified with publicly with disabilities and spoke on this, and we were just so productive. And and the only way to do it is to get started. And these were people that brought just unique viewpoints, different, more productive ways of doing things, as well as the energy of the group was so amazing. And we see that reflected in data, right? We see that when you hire people with disabilities, the culture is improved, as well as like workplace retention and workplace productivity. You can't argue with those numbers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, I know you've held many roles during your time at the chamber, and your current role allows you to link over 60,000 businesses to this new network that the chamber has established. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about all the important work that you're currently doing and the advantages of this new network.
Thank you. Yeah. So I work at the OCC, and I'm the team lead for a program called Discoverability Network, www.discoverability.network. And it's free. And it was created about 10 years ago. We've improved it and expanded. But the job is to allow employers for free to connect to great talent who just happen to have a disability. So this isn't an initiative where we're saying just hire somebody with a disability, it'll make you better. It's like hired someone qualified with a disability. So, this isn't a sympathy project. This is like people have amazing talents and they've just faced more barriers. So it's to remove barriers. So as part of that, we have a roadmap to hiring people with disabilities on the website. So you can download interview questions. You can download where do we get started. You can download the Conference Board of Canada toolkit, which we link to. There's lots of different resources, as well as other organizations that we work with, like the David C. Onley Initiative. They've done some great work. Government websites that link you to AODA requirements, which will just help you be better at your job. Organizations like Ontario Disability Employment Network, ODIN, or other organizations that are just doing a great job, can win partners, are doing a great job in this space. And when needed, like I give 2 AODA webinars for free publicly every year, and we do on-demand training in some cases. So yeah, reach out, use the tools, reach out to some of the speakers that we have listed. I think you're on there, Kevin. There's just so much there. But beyond that, we've also embedded accessibility and inclusion into other programs at the chamber. So for instance, on our Talent Opportunities Program, which is a subsidy for new students that a company hires, something like 60, 65, 70% of those candidates come from equity deserving groups. That's huge. We all need to be taking steps to do that. So we really are trying to make a difference in this space. And those are 2 of the programs that I can mention.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Alyssa, when I worked on the winter version of the Discoverability Network, we talked a lot about the need to collaborate because you get more done in this space when you collaborate with partners, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're still a little siloed, more siloed than probably we need to be. But we're working really hard to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts out there. And we're really trying to partner with organizations that are also doing excellent work in this space so that, the employers have one place to go, nowhere to get those supports, get their questions answered, because, yeah, we got to work together. This is a societal issue, not just one organizational issue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Lisa, when I talk to employers about the importance of hiring folks with disabilities, I always tell them to put them in positions of leadership, because if they can see themselves in a position of power, it really elevates the entire organization. Would you agree with that?
Well, if they're qualified, yes. So totally. But again, when I look at the example for us, that definitely happened because we gave people opportunities. When our program, elements of the program wound down, we actually saw people leave and lead to jobs that they never thought they would get. They like really incredible jobs, and positions of authority, positions that were more equitable in terms of their skills and education. It was just getting that first step to get something on their resume, and they definitely have the capacity to be leaders, and it was just somebody giving them that first chance to be able to do it. So yeah, I think that's the retention piece. We often talk about hiring people with disabilities, but how do we excite them, make them want to keep staying there? And that's really supporting career advancements and opportunities so that people have that chance to grow into the roles that they have. And then if you, of course, have a leader and you bring them in, then they should definitely be showcased.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that the Ontario Chamber of Commerce is focused on advancing their policy priorities with the government and policies that impact the province from a business perspective, Lisa. And I know that it all focuses on the idea of inclusion, doesn't it? So I'm wondering if you could tell me about some of the policies and advancements the Chamber has made in this regard.
So I'm not a policy expert, but I can tell you again, we've embedded inclusion and different diversity groups across all the work that we do, because it shouldn't be siloed over here like, oh, we've hired 2 people with disabilities, we've done our job. So again, we've got the Discoverability Network, which was born out of workforce development issues, right? So we have longstanding councils at the Chamber. We have 5 of them. One of them is health, and one of them is workforce development, both which obviously touch specifically on issues that are related to disability. And out of that Workforce Development Council came the discoverability, because it's like, oh, we have labor force shortages, so let's create, this underutilized pool of people. Let's just start connecting them and help with that. But we also, in the Health Policy Council, we have a new member. I don't usually shout out on new members, but these guys were so great. The Ontario Caregivers Association, who we're going to be doing another webinar with. And you don't immediately think about disability, but there are a tremendous number of people who support children or aging parents or neighbors or friends who are dealing with disability, who the organization provides, again, free supports, training, to be able to assist. And especially, I think we saw this during the pandemic, the mental health benefits. And that's, again, another focus of our workforce. We've actually put out a couple mental health pieces. We're doing one now on the opioid crisis. And of course, addictions is a disability. So yeah, we're touching in those councils in particular, all the way across the board. And this will remain a long-standing priority, and it will continue into the future because it affects all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, I know that you're personally committed to the commitment towards inclusion. And I'm curious for you, how do you personally define inclusion, and how do you think it's related to innovation? What are your thoughts there?
So this has kind of been a passion for me for a long time since I started working, and it's just grown in the different elements of different careers that I've had, because I've not really had, career in one area. I was a small business owner for 25 years, and then I decided to, the lack of access, for instance, to daycare affected my, so as a woman, as a diverse group, that definitely affected me. And then as a disability advocate, I saw that, how when I worked with different organizations, diversity in all its forms, including disability, brings new perspectives and often really great problem solving. So again, at the OCC, of the staff we had working on the Discoverability Network, 75% of them identified as having a disability. And one of the things that we saw immediately, we hired somebody who was blind And we had made our platform accessible, but it was only accessible using one type of technology. So once we got this individual on, she was able to go, yeah, it doesn't work across multiple platforms. So we corrected that. We worked with the CNIB. We worked with her to make sure that it worked across all those different platforms. So we could tick a box and say it was accessible, but it wasn't really. I think in terms of flexible working, we saw a tremendous shift. Like we all worked from home during the COVID, and the number of people that we helped get jobs just it went up on a curve. It was unbelievable. And we're all working from home, which is something that often people with disabilities are told, hey, you have to come into the office. Well, that can be challenging depending on your disability. And certainly in terms of flexibility, I think is the number one requested or one of the top 3 requested accommodations. And we saw that actually doesn't work. So the depth of our content and our thinking was so impacted by people providing different perspectives. Suddenly we're reaching out not just to businesses, but we started identifying, well, people with disabilities don't know what we're saying to business and why. So let's talk to people with disabilities. Let's talk to disability organizations. Let's talk to post-secondary education institutions, all on this broader range of topics. So it's not just about, hey, feel comfortable, hire somebody with a disability, but it might be things about, have you thought about how difficult on both ends disability disclosure is? Have you thought of more creative ways and how accommodations can actually provide a return on investment? I think it's something like for every dollar you invest in an accommodation, you get $28 in productivity returns. That's compelling, and it's business language. So businesses like to hear that. So again, it was just having these broad set of individuals who came to our organizations and said, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? Is this accessible? Is this really accessible? What about the way we speak, the language we use? It just improved us overall. So I really feel like inclusion across all dimensions, because, some of us have multiple perspectives, multiple intersectionalities. But, in the disability space, there's a lot we can do that actually just massively improves our business.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, for any employer watching this today, I think hiring folks with disabilities is a great way to sort of close the labor gap that and shortage that we're experiencing. So for any employer watching this today that says, I want to hire someone with a disability, or I've considered it before, but I don't know where to start, what would you tell them about tangible action steps they can take now to infuse them into the workforce?
Well, so this one is a little bit frustrating for me, because I think there's a lot of things we tell people. And the biggest thing would be, and to borrow a phrase that's famous, just do it. Just stop talking about, stop worrying about it, just do it. Just go out and hire somebody. Take that leap of faith. There's no other equity deserving group that we need arguments about the business case for hiring, like women, or the business case for hiring newcomers. It just shouldn't be. So why do we have a business case, and why do we need a business case for hiring people with disabilities? We don't. We know that they are people, and if they're qualified and they have a great attitude, just hire them. Just do it. Resumes and work experience often look different for people with disabilities, usually because they've had more barriers they've had to overcome. So it might take longer to get an education. You might not get the first job in your field as early as somebody who hasn't faced barriers. So be open to that resume looking different, the work experience looking different. Talk to people, listen to them, and then just do it. Just hire them, period. We shouldn't hire someone with the best resume. We should just hire the person who's right for the job. And there are tons of people with disabilities who have slightly, maybe volunteer work instead of paid work, who are just as qualified, and we should just do it. And then we should celebrate those hires. You talked about, leadership, being in a position of leadership, and that should be visible. Yes, but we should also make it visible and comfortable for people to self-identify if they want. We should make it okay to talk about disability. I know in our organization, since I've come on, because I'm a pretty big advocate, a lot of people who no one ever knew suddenly feel comfortable about talking about their disability, and it's just improved the culture. We should provide accommodations because people can do the job then. They're a legal requirement, but they can often make people so much better at their job. And they don't have to feel awkward asking you for something which is their right. So, I just think just do it would be my advice. Just go ahead and start. We had a company last year, Kevin, that came to us and wanted to set up a model. They ended up hiring 26 people. A year later, 25 were still working there. They were doing such a great job. Some of them had moved on, expanded opportunities, promotions. That organization is now hiring another 25, and they're rolling the model out to BC. That speaks to how well people can do their jobs if you just give them a chance. So just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, what are your thoughts on the social and emotional benefits of hiring folks with disabilities and the change in perspective that giving a person with a disability a job does to their mental and emotional well-being? What are your thoughts there?
So imagine that you can't get a paycheck. So let's just start with that. The emotional benefits of having a paycheck and being able to make your bills, I can't think of something that has more of an impact than that. Okay. Beyond that, wow, I feel great doing something I love, but just start at the bare minimum that somebody can't earn a living through nothing that they've done, just through who they are. So the right to work should be open to everybody who's able to do it. I feel so lucky, for instance, that I work at the OCC now, because I've had instances where I couldn't disclose, Kevin, and it really made it difficult. And it had a huge emotional and mental impact on me and left me not working for a while, which nobody feels good when they're not working. I know there's the, oh, people want to be on disability. No, I've never met anybody who wants to be on disability subsidies that is. I think that you can learn so much from your coworkers about embracing who you are, becoming more productive, being valued, just the value you feel when you've done something well and you're recognized for it from peers. Having a friendship group that expands, right? Because now you're working, that tends to be where a lot of us do our socialization as well as work. So it gives us economic benefits. It gives us social benefits by making and broadening our networks. It gives us emotional benefits in terms of feeling valued. And we get to improve our skills so that we can go on and get a better job or get promoted, make more money, be able to open up opportunities to other people. So it's just, I can't say enough about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, I know that we both share a passion for the Discoverability Network, and it was really a revolutionary concept at the time when it started back in 2018, and I know that you've worked extensively to reshape the network, and I'm just curious to get your overall perspective on the success of the project and how it really helped employers to reshape the way they think about inclusion in the workforce.
So, yeah, I'm very, very proud of the work we've done. Actually, last year, the VP in charge of it, Louis De Palma, won a diversity award. And a lot of it was based on through Charity Village. And a lot of it was based on the work he's done. So while I've worked on this program a lot, I'm going to, do a throw it to Louis because he's incredibly passionate about this subject, probably more than I am. And he gave me an opportunity to work here. I think that one of the things we did is we shifted from this business case for hiring people with disabilities, because as a person with a disability, I don't know about you, Kevin, maybe you feel differently. I don't need a business case for someone to hire me. I just need someone to give me an opportunity. It's kind of offensive, this whole idea of we need to prove, or there has to be additional proof that we're valuable. So instead we started talking about, look at the benefits, right? It's case. It's just the benefits, the added value. So you get somebody who does the job, which should be the business case right there, right? We hire people because they need to do the job. But on top of that, you get a whole bunch of other benefits. And, I think the other thing that on the discoverability job matching platform that I really appreciate is it doesn't talk about fit. Fit makes me really uncomfortable because fit is sometimes code for businesses to hire people like themselves. So instead, it talks about skills matches. So we don't call ourselves a job board. We call ourselves a job matching platform. And it matches skills, location, salary expectations. It's like kind of boring stuff, but it stays away from that where bias can creep in, because I think, bias is probably the number one reason people with disabilities don't get jobs. So I'm really proud that we've done that. I see a lot of the things we've been talking about since 2018 start creeping into other organizations' language, which really makes me proud. I think that, what discoverability did as well is it strips away all the extras we ask people with disabilities to have and just focuses on what do you need? Do you have the skills to do this? We don't need to talk about job experience. We don't need to talk about extracurriculars. We don't need to talk about, I traveled all over the world and that makes me an interesting person. It's instead, no, I have the skills to do the job. So it strips away what the non-necessity. So I think that probably for me, and then the direct hires, we really focused in the last couple of years, Kevin, on actually getting people hired. So it's not enough to train a company and they feel good. It's like, now hire someone. And I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely, as you should, my friend. And Lisa, how do you define a truly inclusive workforce?
Yeah, so I'm going to borrow from Jess Mitchell, a guru from the OCAD. Diversity is a number, inclusion's a choice. So you can have lots of people with disabilities in your organization, but if they don't feel included, which is actually belief and behavior, right? So we need to not only hire people, we need to believe that they matter, and then we have to act like they matter. So we need to be sure that we have diversity. That's definitely, we have that number, but we also need to value it and leverage it. People need to feel like they're contributing and respected. They need to have opportunities to progress in their career. We need to make sure that policies, practices, and the physical environment are accessible. And that's why I'm a big fan of the AODA. When I first heard about it years ago, it was like, it's so boring, but it isn't. It's the lifeblood of how we get started on this. I think also that our leaders listen and they value diversity, and that it's a two-way conversation. So it's back and forth. It's not you talking at your employees, it's your employees being able to feel like they're contributing and that they matter. So again, I think that matter of belief and a matter of behavior. And there are so many ways we can behave to make people feel included.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about an inclusive interview process, Lisa, I also think it's important for the job seeker to really interview the employer, to really see if they can create a mutually beneficial partnership. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on that notion, and also to ask you what sort of questions should a job seeker and an employer ask during an interview process to make it truly fair and inclusive? What are your thoughts there?
Oh, very good question. Again, we could do a whole hour chat on just this, Kevin. So in terms of, an interview is a two-way dialogue, right? So oftentimes job seekers think, the company has to like me. Well, you have to like the company too, right? So just like there's a lot of job seekers out there, there's a lot of companies, okay? So you want to pick one where you feel you're valued and that this is a place that I could work. So that said, one of the things that I really encourage, this has changed. My view on this has changed over time, Kevin. I think if you have a disability, you should really think heavily about disclosing early. Now, that's controversial. It's everybody's own choice about when you disclose or if you disclose. Okay, some of us, may not have a choice because we have a visible disability. But if we have an invisible disability that's going to disadvantage us at some point, like, so for me, my disability, I've just started in the last, well, before I came to the OCC, but, the last 3 jobs, asking for questions to be written down and provided to me just shortly before the interview. I'm not trying to cheat anything. But the way I process information requires me to see those things in writing to be able to formulate my thoughts. Okay, so just something as simple, and then just saying, I experience the world differently. I have a disability. I would appreciate having the questions in writing. Right? I don't have to overshare details, but I do need to know what will help me both in the interview succeed and then eventually on the job. Because if you're muddling through, and I see this with a lot of people that I've interviewed, I was a career counselor for a while, working with people with disabilities. If you can't express why you're having difficulty sharing what's best about you or giving great examples, it's easier for that other person to know that this is related to a disability or a difference than it is they're guessing and thinking, oh, this person just isn't a good communicator, or this person doesn't have the skill sets. So I think that it's as the onus on us as job seekers is to present ourselves in the best way possible. And that might be disclosing early. So that's one thing I talk a lot about. And then disclosing appropriately and not asking or sharing too much information, because that's usually what happens. I know the first time I disclosed, Kevin, I just blurted it out to a room of like 90 people. And I'm sure I made everybody uncomfortable. And it was awful for them and for me because it wasn't necessary to get the point across. And it was more like oversharing. And I looked disability focused instead of trying to just make my point. So practicing can be really important. I think as employers, instead of saying, do you have a disability where you legally require an accommodation, right? You could just say, we want everybody in this organization to thrive. Is there anything we can do, perhaps provide an accommodation that might assist you to do a great job? So changing the language from a legal framework to, you've just sent somebody this message. We're okay with hiring people with disabilities. We'll provide accommodations. Tell me if you need it. Because it's very scary as a person with a disability to share that you have one, especially if you can mask it. So I think things like that. I think that in terms of questions, I really hate the question, tell me about yourself. Because again, I've seen people who are neurodiverse. And they don't know what you're asking them. Does that mean tell me about myself at home? Tell me about myself with my family? Tell you everything I've ever done? Or is that, can you walk me through your resume? And, you're required to have administrative skills. And can you show me where you've demonstrated that? Such a better question, very specific, and makes it fair for everyone, right? And it doesn't mean paid job. It means, oh, I was volunteering here and I had used these I answered phones, I answered emails, right? So being very careful about the questions we asking, staying away from too many types of questions that rely on people extrapolating. Again, focus on what the job requires and then ask questions about that. You would be required to answer emails. Can you tell me how you would, on average, we have 40 emails a day. Can you tell me how you would do that? Right? Instead of tell me about a time, when you communicated. One's so broad, it means nothing, and one's quite specific to the job. So I think just spending a lot of time setting up interviews that are inclusive questions. It's really difficult. Do a scale that you apply to everybody, so you don't go, oh yeah, Kevin, I just liked him. Let's just hire him. There's something about him, which is usually when bias kicks in. So again, Kevin said that he, has email skill. He's able to use the internet. He's able to, use email. He's able to respond to 50, email inquiries a day and just do a better job rating. I also am a bit of a proponent, Kevin, for somebody with a disability ends up in front of you and they tell you they have overcome so many more barriers than the person who doesn't. So give them some bonus points for perseverance and just getting to that point.
Yeah, totally agree, Lisa. And I have three questions left for you. And the first one has to do with accommodation specifically. And you and I both know that accommodations sometimes for employers can be a word that they're afraid sometimes to embrace, but it's really not that difficult to accommodate someone with a disability if you just talk to them, right? So tell me about your thoughts on accommodations and how easy it is for employers to infuse them into a workforce.
Yeah, so accommodations are usually the biggest question I get about from employers when I talk to them. So accommodations can cost nothing, like asking appropriate accommodation or interview questions. That's an accommodation in a way, or it's actually just makes sense, or providing it on a printout doesn't cost anything. That's an accommodation, okay? An accommodation might be, for myself, as I age, I've acquired more disabilities. Allowing someone to stand up and stretch, right? Every 15 minutes. Doesn't cost you a thing. Allows the person to move around, feel comfortable. The most common accommodations, I think, are flexibility. So again, being flexible about letting people stand. I'm really fortunate at the OCC. We have sit-stand desks when I came, so I'm very grateful for that. But, for myself personally, life-changing for me, Kevin, noise-canceling headsets. I had never worked in an open concept environment. I had no idea how noisy it is. And I got to my job at the chamber and it was like, oh, I can't do this. I'm overwhelmed. I couldn't concentrate. I said, I immediately went to can I have my own office? And Louis said, no, we don't have enough offices for everyone. What's the problem? Right? So look at the mismatch. So an accommodation really addresses a mismatch. And for me, it's the noise. So easy noise canceling headsets. And it turns out everybody in our organization, after they saw me get a pair, got one because everybody's bothered by noise, right? But it could be allowing someone to work remotely. It could be doing a remote interview. It could be, people always think elevators, which is so rare. Let the person work remotely or let them work in an accessible version of your office, right? You can still hire someone and they work from home. Set them up with, or make sure that they have the setup at home, able to do the job. Start times, transportation issues. Those are really real. So we actually set up a transportation bus for an organization. We got some funding, help them, get some funding for that, or just transportation training. There are so many organizations out there, employment service providers who work with people with disabilities who can help you with this stuff at no charge, by the way, at no charge. Access employment, right? Community living. There's just a ton of them. So utilize some of those supports, different ways of training. And sometimes that training and the different ways we train works for everybody, again, not just for people with disabilities, because we tend to, shortcut things and do it in a way that makes us comfortable, but maybe not somebody with a difference. So there can be way better ways. And that's that innovation and productivity piece you talked about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, I'm going to end with a two-part question, and I wanted your thoughts on how do you define a truly inclusive future from an employment perspective going forward? And when you look at your own personal and professional legacy, how do you want that to be defined?
So, sorry, the first part of the question was, how do I define an inclusive future?
Employment future in Canada and across the province for folks with disabilities. What are your thoughts there?
So I think it would be that everybody who has a disability is able to not only apply, but be considered for jobs they're qualified for, and being able to be given a chance to work, a chance to improve on the job, and, not be filtered out because of differences. I think that's changing somewhat, to tell you the truth. I do think we're getting better at that. we need to do it more. And that's, again, back to that educating yourself and getting rid of your preconceptions, again, across all dimensions of diversity. But people with disabilities face a lot of preconceptions. So, again, I'd like to see businesses celebrate, share their stories, use the tools that are out there, and just do it. In terms of my personal and professional legacy, I guess I'd just really like for Kevin, you're making me tear up. I guess I'd really love for somebody, and I've been fortunate to hear this a couple times in my career. Oh, I learned something new and something positive that changed my mind about somebody's ability to do things. So that makes my day when I hear a person with a disability, or a person, a government or an employment service provider or a university share that with me. That really makes a difference, because Jess Mitchell, again, from the Ontario Centre for Arts and Design, once said to me that when you train, you want to help people see something that they can never unsee. And I'd like to have people see disability as a positive, as a strength, as a different way of looking at the world that can make you better and your company better. So that would be, I think, both my professional and personal. I love to be remembered as the person who assisted somebody with a disability to get an amazing career, not just a job. And I guess I'd like to be remembered that I opened someone up to, again, that positive perspectives on disability that maybe they'd never considered, letting them see something that they'll never unsee. So see disability as this positive thing and move forward, share that message.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Lisa, tell me, if people want to get connected with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce or yourself personally, what's the best way they can do that?
So if you are interested in the Discoverability Network, you can go on, and there's an information at the bottom of the website, www.discoverability.network. There's an information form you can fill out, and it will go to the appropriate person in our office. If you want to reach out to me directly, I don't support job seekers, just to make it clear. So, I encourage you to reach out to some of the organizations I've mentioned who can help you. But if you're a business who needs help with this, you can reach me at lisakelley@occ.ca. And I'd very much love to help.
Fabulous. Well, Lisa, it's always great to see you. I want to commend you for your commitment towards inclusion for folks with disabilities in their employment future. And it's always wonderful to engage in conversation with you. And I want to thank you for being here this morning. It's most appreciated.
Kevin, you are always a joy to speak to, and you've made such an impact in this field. And as I said to you before the webinar started, it's a privilege to be able to just be in the room with you and talk to you.